Good evening, all. Welcome back to Tweaking Tuesday, another session. This is session number 18. We are particularly focusing on integrating smart skills for inter-competency mastery. That means we are about to see some of the skill areas that are commonly intersecting between more than two competencies. So those skills, when the same skill area being presented to you at different competency, then you have to look into that from that point of view. That is very important because many of the candidates they keep adding value engineering, like primarily first question we are about to discuss about value engineering into case studies, summary of experience in many areas. But when they go into particular summary of experience competency, you are presenting value engineering. Although value engineering workshop is the same activity that you are participating or leading, although when you approach from different point of view, you should be able to touch the level 3 requirement of that particular competency. That is very important. When you go into construction technology and environmental services, you have to look into the technical aspect of value engineering practice. How would you execute finding alternative materials, solutions, or methods of executing the construction activities? So that is important. But when you go for quantification and costing, you have to look into the view that is primarily focusing on how you are going to, what is the standard method of measurement or your bespoke method of measurement you are going to utilize to quantify the value engineered elements and cost them. So that is the purpose of today's session. So let us move on to the presentation. The first question is about value engineering. So value engineering, describe a value engineering exercise you initiated or led. How did you synthesize technical, cost, and contractual inputs? And what was your final recent advice on a major proposed option, specifically addressing its impact on the project's profitability, risk profile, contract administration? So when you look into commercial management, primarily focusing on profitability, someone, would you please try to answer this question from the point of view of commercial management? Is it clear, or you want me to come back on the question? Because this value engineering skill, it is overlapping skill. So you have application into many core competencies. When you take into commercial management, so what are all the things you need to do at level 3 requirement as per pathway guide? If you go to the page number 22, which is commercial management of construction works. So it is asking about monitor, report and advise on project cash flows and profitability, evaluate and advise on the financial implications and appropriate management actions. So in focus with these elements, if you go into level 3 focus and guideline for the commercial management, you have to focus on profitability. Because here, when you look into maybe alternative material, the material is scarce, it is not available, it is maybe the price escalation was there. For that reason, you were unable to procure the material. You are looking into alternate materials. In that case, what you would do? So you have to keep the same budget. It should not exceed the budget. Then you will lose your profitability because the material is not available. Although you may go for claim, that is a different thing because it is not initiated by the employer. So the first thing you have to do, try to keep the budget same, and you have to maintain your profitability for your organization, because this is we are addressing in terms of commercial manager for the contractor. So you have to look into cost value reconciliation, margin, and contractors commercial exposure. All these things you have to take into consideration and discuss the advice given on securing supply chain changes to protect the cash flow forecast. Sometimes you may need to maintain the cash flow. Maybe some of the reasons the supply chain is demanding upfront payment. They are not agreeing for back to back. So what is the way you can negotiate and go for some alternative arrangement for the payment also? So that can be also utilized. How would you do that? The method of procurement, because just in time, those kind of technology which is applicable for sustainability measures, lean construction. So your delivery will be on time without storing the material on site. So those kind of things, particularly focusing on maintaining the profitability and using the tools and techniques that is available for you, such as cost value reconciliation and cash flow forecast. All these things you will utilize within the commercial management to advise the value engineering exercise which have been conducted in your organization for some specific purpose. You can bring any particular example that you are familiar with and try to answer from the point of the particular competency. That is very important. When you move on to construction technology, so focus the justification of the resulting alternative design, technology, material, whichever is there that you are proposing as alternate solution to the existing one, contractual one. Now you have to work into those things to identify and validate against suitability of the solution, particularly using modern methods of construction and its impact on the building's long-term performance and whole life cost. All these things you have to look into when you are answering from the viewpoint of construction technology. Here, construction technology, it is mainly about the project life cycle as well as the whole life cost. And then the third one is contract practice. So you have to see how you are going to implement when you are applying the value engineering. Are there any value engineering provisions available within the contract that you are entitled to ask the benefit sharing? So FIDIC has the benefit sharing, but whether this is applicable for that reason, the employer is ready to share the benefit when you change material or particular design elements due to some reasons that is local. So those kind of things you have to look into contract practice, whether you are going to use the existing contract provisions or you want to amend some contract provisions. Maybe you want to change something that is not available. You have to negotiate with the employer, engineer to incorporate the requirement. Otherwise, whether it is going to be a change due to market conditions. So it is out of your control. The contractor has no control over the material availability or specialist availability. Those kind of things you can take into consideration for change of contract provisions by amending them, or else you want to bring into some memorandum of understanding or supplementary contract. Those kind of arrangements you can explore and advise on them. How you are going to retain the risk now or transfer it, because this risk, when you are bringing some changes to the existing design or solutions or material as per your contractual provisions, now this is going to be a new risk. Whether is this transferable or retainable, or you have to share, what kind of action you could do, and then how would you implement collateral warranties or operations of liquidated damages. Maybe some of the subcontractor or supply chain was unable to provide their service or material. That may be the cause. So what is the reason? You have to analyze the root cause and choose appropriate contractual remedy that is required for that particular value engineering exercise. Okay, next we can discuss the same value engineering exercise for the design economics. Now, when you are going for design economics, the financial justification is very important. So this can be done most probably at design stage instead of commercial management of construction works, where you are doing these things during the construction. But at the design development stage or before going for tendering, during that point of time, you can try to explore using the value engineering exercise to identify, to achieve cost value. So that can be done using the value engineering outcome using a rigorous cost model and using the benchmarking from your in-house data or market benchmarking if it all are available, like BCAS for UK, that can be utilized for other countries also, applying the regional and country specific factors. And again, some of the things that is helpful when you are going for sustainable measures like life cycle, whole life costing to demonstrate best value and also cost effective design solutions. These are the things you have to consider when you go for answering in the view of design economics. The same value engineering can be utilized under different competency as we discussed, further to which quantification and costing also, as we discussed earlier, it is important. You have to see how you are going to price the elements because it is similar to valuing the change like variation. So you have to see whether there are any existing BOQ rates, similar BOQ items are available to utilize, or else you have to go for first principle, building up the rate or star rate, those kind of things you are going to utilize. How would you price them? And what are all the different quantification methods? Whether existing BOQ, it has the detail. Otherwise, if at all it is not clearly justified or specified within the standard method of measurement used by that project within the contract provisions, then you have to find ways to implement how you are going to measure it. That is also very important. Whether you are going to utilize some provisional quantity techniques which are not used for clear cut precise quantity available during the value engineering. So you have to utilize some sort of provisional quantity and where it is important for achieving the costing purpose. So that's what it is important. Okay. Anybody wants to add something or discuss here? Mr. Joshi, Mr. Rasan, Mr. Hussain?
No, sir. You have given clearly descriptive information, sir, and it covers all the angles of the value engineering. It is nice discussion, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody having further clarification?
No, sir. All good. All good.
Okay. Thank you. So let us move on to next question. This is the common area which is overlapping into many core competencies. So here we have listed out contract practice, procurement and tendering, project finance, control and reporting, the risk management and allocation. Now you have to manage the risk. So it can be from the beginning, but still it is important to keep in the perspective of which competency we are going to utilize. You have been asked to advise a new client on the risk allocation strategy for a project with an aggressive schedule and complex site condition. Aggressive schedule means it is very stringent. That means tight schedule. You don't have much activities with allowable floats or more activities that is coming under the non-critical path areas. So primarily most of the activities are in the critical path. So that becomes aggressive schedule. That means you don't have surplus time allowed within the schedule. The complex site conditions means again the work activities are parallel and very complex. So you have to manage appropriately. So compare and contrast two procurement route. Particularly it is mentioning about design and build versus construction management in terms of risk. So first we will try to focus on this procurement and tendering, design and build versus construction management in terms of risk allocation. Anybody wants to try? Nobody? Here when we go for procurement and tendering, here we have to see strategic use of procurement to achieve the desired risk allocation. So here appropriateness of the procurement route based on the client's attitude to risk and the nature of the project. So here nature of the project, it is very complex as well as it is having aggressive schedule. That means you need to go for construction as early as possible. Although the construction management, it is fine, but if you want to achieve time, design and build is the single point responsibility where you can transfer the complete risk to the contractor. So that is the prime benefit. In construction management, yes, of course, if the client is capable enough to administer the process, then construction management may also be a considerable choice. But again, when it goes to aggressive schedule, you can't delay. If any delay in trade packages, that is going to detrimental effect on the project. And again, complex site conditions. That means you have to coordinate very well. Otherwise, it is going to be worrisome. You may not be able to control them. So you have to see the client is capable enough. He is seasoned developer, or he is having a department of supervising facility and controlling the activity, administering the contract. All these facility if they have within their organization, then of course you can consider construction management. Otherwise, it is better to advise design and build. That is the fine thing to do when it comes to complex site conditions and aggressive schedule. That is the project nature. So you would choose based on this and advise the client. At the same time, if at all you want to go for other traditional route, you want to make sure that the design is complete before construction, maybe you try to go for two-stage tendering and all. You can discuss those things. But when we are specific with the design and build and construction management, you can compare and contrast those things and move forward. So again, how about contract practice? Now you want to transfer the risk. So when you are transferring the risk, what is your final recent advice on the most appropriate procurement route, and how would you implement a control system for managing the residual risk? So you have to see the contract practice and project finance control and reporting. So that is the thing when you go for implementing a control system. So primarily you have to provide required contractual provisions through contract practice, and then you have to manage the risk during the construction under the project finance control and reporting. So anybody wants to try this portion? Okay, if not. So focus on risk transfer through contract terms. So you have to make sure all the contract terms, advice on how the chosen contract form, maybe you are using FIDIC, NEC, JCT or bespoke, explicitly allocate risk for time, cost and design, and which party holds the risk. You have to list out under whom. Clearly all the things to be defined within the contract provisions. The terms of contract should dictate it clearly. No ambiguity should be there on the ownership of the risk. Evaluate the appropriateness and implications of proposed contractual amendments to reallocate the risk. Maybe if the standard form of contract where you have general conditions of contract which is not supporting the risk transfer, you have to see the way to reallocate the risk through particular conditions of contract. That has to be done in order to achieve the required risk transfer through contractual terms. This is under contract practice. Once done, now you have certain level of assurance that the risk has been clearly dictated for the ownership. And then when you are going into project finance, now you have to make sure the risk quantification and financial control, advice on strategy and procedures to control the predicted expenditure in line with the budget. So now you should have the budget already. You should have the budget. Based on that budget, you would be able to manage the project by clearly providing periodical reports using some KPIs, and again the risk management when you are using the quantification techniques to establish, manage and report the appropriate level of contingency within the financial reports. In addition to your maintaining the budget, you have to make sure that the contingency also addressed within the financial reports. That is the main element when you go for project finance, because it is financially managing the project by controlling and reporting. So that is what important when you go for project financial control and reporting. So anybody wants to add something, clarify something, or you want to try differently using these things? Still no? Okay.
Hmm.
Let us move on to next question, which is under the post-contract cost and valuation. So when you say cost and valuation, directly it is relevant to quantification and costing primarily. And then automatically this is about the cost and valuation, which also covered under commercial management, project finance. Because when you go for commercial management, you have to monitor, report and advise on project cash flow and profitability, evaluate and advise on the financial implications and the appropriate management actions. That is important. And when you are under project finance, advise on strategies and procedures to control the predicted expenditure in line with the budget. That means you have already cash flow forecast, you have the budget, you have to control the predicted expenditure. That means you know what you need to procure, how you need to utilize that for the project. So that is important. And take responsibility for financial reporting to the client, funding institution or other stakeholders. All these things should be covered under the project finance. Of course, under quantification and costing, you have to advise on appropriate methods of quantification and costing for specific elements of the project, give advice and or supervise the valuation of construction works throughout the project. So what you will do when you are going into quantification and costing, we will focus on technical valuation and quantification. So then we will advise on the correct contractual basis for valuation. Like when you are for costing, yes, of course, this pro rata basis, star rates, day works, using some formula, all these things are utilized for pricing purpose. Quantifying, how would you measure remeasurement? So you want to, there are some ambiguity between your valuation and the contractor's submission or subcontractor's claim. So how would you measure that joint remeasurement? Those kind of things you will do. Maybe you would do auditing, like a forensic analysis of the records to make sure which substantiate the loss and expenditure claim. So this is also for the site records. Like if at all it is about the day works, you should have in section and you should have the day work reports maintained on daily basis that has to be approved for the labor, plant, material utilization with respect to day works. That is different from your any other claim. This is about loss and expense, not about the delay claims. EOT, that is different story. EOT you would get paid based on the preliminaries for the specific duration. Day works are completely different. So you have to make sure how you are valuing particular elements. And when we go for commercial management, again we will focus on the contractor's profitability and risk appetite. So how you will perceive the risk from the point of contractor. Advice on the preparation of claim submission. If at all something it is not being able to support your particular variation claims when it is unforeseen change, you have to make sure that it has to be submitted on time, notified on time. Although notification and all, it is contract practice and contract administration, but still as a commercial manager, it's your responsibility to make sure you retain your entitlement for the maintenance of profitability. So here you should also discuss about commercial team on mitigation also. So you should try to mitigate, because you should not simply claim it from the client or employer and ignoring the mitigation opportunities that are available to you as a contractor's commercial manager. And you have to see whether these are providing you the cost benefit analysis. So what is the value you are achieving? So that is also there. So this margin forecast also you have to make as per the variation what we are discussing here when you are valuing unexpected or unforeseen change. Now when you are going for the project finance, we have to focus on client financial control and reporting. So now it is clearly mentioned under the project financial control and reporting. No internal reports are considered under this. Anybody wants to mention something? Okay. So it is in your pathway guide for the quantity surveying and construction. It is clearly mentioned in the page 34, which is for project finance, that your internal reports are not included here. Only the external reports are covered under the project finance. So when you are considering the client financial control and reporting, you have to advise the client on the financial impact for the overall project budget and development appraisal. And also you should discuss about the procedures for the correct drawdown of the funds, whether you are seeking some contingency allowance that has to be utilized from the client's point of view, not from the contractor's point of view, when you are justifying the expenditure against the risk register, and the reporting the financial movement to the funding body. So when you are doing something, if you are utilizing some of the funding bodies or clients board who are particularly taking care of the financial control, so for them you have to provide these details with your risk mitigation tactics. So that is very important when you are advising under the project finance. So these are the three major core competencies that comes under when you are facing unforeseen change on your project requires a significant variation. It is not something that initiated by the employer or the engineer. This is unforeseen. That means maybe due to the project's nature itself, for the substantial completion of the project, you may require this unforeseen change to be incorporated. That may lead to some sort of a variation claim or loss and expense claim. So that is the area you are taking into consideration when you are answering this scenario. Let us move on to next question, which is about tender management and reporting. So here also it is coming under the commercial management, procurement and tendering, and quantification and costing also. So following a competitive tendering process, the lowest bid significantly exceeds the budget. That means the lowest bid itself, it is exceeding the budget. Detail the steps you would take advising the client on a robust strategy. How would you structure your financial report to justify the chosen remedial strategy? Either you are using the negotiation, value engineering, or retendering. What do you want to do? So you may suggest something or recommend something while safeguarding commercial confidentiality and ensuring procurement fairness. You have to maintain the confidentiality as well as it should be providing or ensuring the procurement fairness. So what is procurement fairness? Anybody? Mr. Joshi?
Procurement fairness means we have to give equal opportunity to all the participants in the bid process, and also we have to maintain the integrity and competition in the project while the bidding process. And one thing is there for this tender management, when I received the lowest tender is slightly above our pre-tender estimate. First, I will check whether I will compare with all the items, quoted items by the contractor against my pre-tender estimate, and I will identify certain areas where it is exceeding, and accordingly I will get the clarification not from the slightly higher contract bid, but also from other also I will get to balance with all the tenders quotation.
Yes. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay, it's fine. So first, when we focus on the process, so the fairness and documentation. So as Mr. Joshi mentioned, you have to maintain the integrity. That is important. You have to advise on the procedural compliance of the tender process. How do you do? Justify that any negotiation, remedial action maintains the equity and transparency among all the bidders. Detail the strategy for using a standstill period. That means maybe you want to renegotiate, reconsider the elements. You have to inform that there is going to be certain time required to process the tender before going into any sort of awarding. So there will be additional time required that you have to mention, because the tenderers would have submitted you like tender bond. So to cover some extent, maybe you have some 90 days period extending automatically to another 30 days, 120 days, or you may have extended period. If at all you require more time, you need to inform them that you require additional time to conclude these things. So when you prepare how the tendering report justify the financial recommendation and eventual award under the chosen procurement route, these are the things are considered under the procurement and tendering. When you go for quantification and costing, you have to focus on cost analysis and technical audit. How do you do that? Before you go for analyzing tender analysis, you have to normalize the tender and you have to compare with your own estimate or benchmarking. So advise the client on the source of the cost overrun by conducting a detailed comparative cost audit, because you have to identify root cause why it is exceeding your budget. It's not simply that every element is exceeding. In most of the cases, practically it may be few areas where it is exceeding. So you have to identify that. So you have to conduct a detailed audit, cost audit, and you have to find which are the elemental cost details based on our cost plan, what was used during the uh, design stage, which was utilized for final tender estimate, pre-tender estimate. That one you have to verify. So why we were unable to predict the tender price index? So that means the tendency to price by the contractors at that point of time. Maybe the cost may be the same, but when you go for certain elements, maybe due to price escalation or scarcity of the material availability or specialist availability or monopoly, maybe there may be a number of reasons, but we try to identify the root cause why certain elements or certain area of BOQ that exceeding the budget. If at all overall, then again that is going to be the tender price index, because the contractors move on to a tendency where they are pricing higher with more risk allowance and additional contingency to cover up their cost or something similar. Okay, anybody having something? So that is the thing we will do under the quantification and costing. When you go for commercial management, this is the area where you discuss about supply chain. That means the contractors. Now you are going to the contractors to mitigate or close the gap. That means there are certain elements you can look into the options by negotiating, or you may ask them to provide some alternative methods, materials, or value engineering proposals. So you may ask them to submit something in the common. So you should send post-tender clarification requesting them to provide some of these things and call them for meeting and discuss with them. So where it becomes the unbalanced tender, you want to balance it to the benefit of the client to avoid future commercial claims, because you can't keep them like that. Simply you cannot negotiate and bring down. That is also impossible. That may be risky. So to protect the client's position, you have to make sure that a reasonable level of negotiation can be taken place. And again, you may ask for alternative that should give equal opportunity to all the bidders. So those kind of things you have to practice before advising the client about the appropriate procedure to remedy. Okay, anybody wants to discuss something or clarify or add something to this? Thank you for that. Let us move on to next question. Sustainable construction and whole life costing. So here your client is considering on optional sustainable feature, maybe example for a green roof or a grey water recycling system. For a new commercial building, describe the whole life costing methodology you would use to justify this feature. How would your recent advice differ in its focus when advising the design team on technical suitability versus advising the client on project finance and investment returns? Because the client and technical design team are different. So in that case, so we are advising the design team based on the suitability while we are advising the client on project finance and investment returns, because this is about whole life costing, not only the construction cost. You have to explore further during the operations and maintenance. So what are all the core competency covered under this? The commercial management of construction works, design economics and cost planning, project financial control and reporting, quantification and costing of construction works. These are the four core competencies covered under this particular element. Anybody would like to try answering from any particular competency?
Can I try?
Yes, please.
For the whole life cycle costing is there from the commercial point of view. I will consider the land acquisition cost, then design cost, then professional services, then supervision consultant cost, construction, maintenance, operation, and finally disposal cost, disposal cost of the project. And this is the commercial point of view. I will evaluate the whole life cycle costing of the project. And this is the methodology is the this is the just as a straight line where we have to work out all the things, parameter of the whole life cycle costing, and we have to advise our client regarding this is the life expectancy and everything of the project. And
Okay.
finance is there, project finance is there. As per the considering this competency, I will advise my client regarding this life expectancy and cash flow analysis for this financial, and to get the financial assistance from the institutes for the project based on this all the whole life cycle cost of the project. And subsequently we can also expect the returns, calculation of returns from the project.
Okay. Anybody else? So particularly when we are looking into the thanks for that, Mr. Joshi. When we are looking into the commercial aspect, so we have to see how it, because when you do the commercial management, you have to see the method related suitability and technical feasibility and how it is going to be sustainable for the compliance and regulations. So when you are seeking some sort of rating systems, something like a LEED, RAM, those kind of things, you have to see the buildability versus implications on the long-term maintenance and operational efficiency. That is very important. So like impacting the energy or water use. So here we have two items. So one, this is like a green roof. Another one is grey water recycling system. So when you are applying these things at design economics, like focus on economic justification and life cycle analysis. Here you would be using something like ISO standards for WLC techniques, including defining the study period, calculating the net present value, because when you are applying the future cost, you have to arrive it on the net present value using the discounted rates. These are very important to compare to the current construction value. So that is very important. You may not be able to compare them directly. So we have to see these are the things. Although when I noticed during the session of design economics and cost planning, many of them or many of the candidates are not taking this in their core competencies. Still, it is helpful to understand what all the things are important when you are doing some sort of whole life costing. So here quantifying the break even point where you are achieving the cost in future because you are going to spend more due to additional feature that is sustainable, but at the same time it is going to increase the cost. When you see the cost value, direct proportionately it won't bring from the construction cost. So you have to seek from where you are going to achieve this, when you are going to achieve this. So that break even point that will be compared to the conventional options what you have, because conventional options you may utilize the regular standard utilities. Yes, Mr. Joshi, you want to add something?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, it's
Please
fine.
continue, sir.
So here these things you have to identify and advise focusing on securing the most cost effective design, because you have to see whether the client would be able to achieve the break even point during the operations period under the whole life costing. If at all it is not going to achieve and save more cost within the reasonable period or time, then it's not going to be cost effective design. So that one we have to consider before advising this option, whether it is suitable or not. So we have to explore further. When we are considering the project finance, how you are going to report these things, you have to seek the investment returns and financial control. So how you have to, because the client should be able to realize that this is achieved, because you are not going to be there if you are from the contractors or engineer or cost consultant, then you may not be available during the operations period. So you have to make sure the client is following the investment returns and financial control, then realize the break even point is achieved at the intended period of time. So whole life cost results on the development appraisal and financial model. During this time, you have to discuss also about the feature effects, something like capital expenditure and operational expenditure, capex, opex. Those comparisons should be given. This may not be regular during the usual project financial control and reporting, but still when you are doing the whole life costing, it is mandatory. You have to note down the influences, the project's funding strategy, what sort of arrangements that can be achieved. So we have to make sure everything considered under those elements, how the tangible and intangible benefits like market value, energy savings are to be accounted in the financial reporting of the client. So you have to provide a template or arrangement to the client. So that is important when you are considering sustainability, whole life costing. And also when we are thinking about configuration and costing, how this is going to be involved, because you are going to price again how you are going to cost the elements. So you have to quantify and cost them. Maybe the quantification, it's going to be similar in nature, but you have to cost them, you have to price it, value it. Then only you will be able to compare them to the operational benefits. That is important. So you will be utilizing the quantification and costing to achieve the pricing, the sustainable elements, which here it is the green roof and the other element is the grey water recycling system. So I have been expecting more discussions on different perspective of core competencies in this session, but unfortunately it is a quiet session with only the guidelines being discussed and Thanks to Mr. Joshi for giving some valuable input during the discussions. So
Just
those
for
are the important areas I kept for this today's discussion. Yes, Mr. Joshi, please go ahead.
no, just for the now, just for applying my logical thinking and whatever I'm studying now, only that much knowledge I have applied here. Uh, I just now updating my knowledge only for this. No, thorough study is there, but still updating. That's why I have shared only certain things, only certain. I have given certain output or input only for this your question, sir.
No problem, because it is all evolution. So we have to evolve.
Yes, sir.
Not only
Evolution.
like achieving the chartership, once we achieve the chartered status after becoming the MRACS also, that is the reason we have the requirement for CPD activities to
Yes, sir.
plan
Yes.
and achieve. That is very important. So thanks for being active. That will benefit the candidate as well as ourselves.
Yes,
That is
sir.
the
Yes, sir.
reason we are conducting these sessions. Anybody having particular things to discuss or any general question answers, clarifications, or you want to go back on certain elements of this presentation? You are welcome.
Hello, hi.
Yes, hi, Mr. Moyo. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't talk as much today. I'm not feeling very well, so I was mainly listening.
Okay, thank you.
Just to, could you describe the value engineering part again? That question. I would like to know how you advise on that aspect. I think it was one of the first questions you put.
Yes.
I didn't understand it quite well, that one.
Because when you go for value engineering, although the workshop, the exercise, it is common single element. Okay, you are executing it on a single point of time. But if you give this example within your summary of experience, like value engineering, you are mentioning under the commercial management. So primary focus should be there, because when you are answering, you should not go and explain about technical feasibility or finding alternative materials, how would you redesign, or those kind of things are not important when you are answering the question or discussing under the commercial management. So when you are discussing the same thing under the construction technology and environmental services, of course you have to elaborate more on technical feasibility of the alternatives you find or identify through value engineering exercise. That is important. And you will find what are the impacts on the design aspect. So particularly when you are focusing on redesigning the elements for the alternative solutions you identified through value engineering. So this impact, how it is going to be quantified in terms of design detailing and making some feasibility study, those kind of taking some approvals, all these things comes under the construction technology. And you may extend that to environmental services or sustainability practices also when you discuss under the construction technology. But if at all you are discussing under the commercial management, so what are the elements are provided under the commercial management when you go to the your pathway guide? So pathway guide, it gives some descriptions. What are all the requirements for the particular competency? So here you have to evaluate and advise the financial implications and appropriate management actions. So what management going to do when they identify certain value engineering? You need to make sure, like a contractor's commercial manager, the profitability of your organization needs to be maintained when you identify alternative solutions. So now this benefit, is it going to be shared or not? So if there are provisions under the contract, you will get the benefit. If it is not, it is being deleted in your contract provisions, then the benefit going to be handed over to the client. In that case, how the profitability, what was intended originally based on the contract award, how you are going to maintain it, whether you are going to compromise financially, or is it still you are in a position to maintain your profitability of your organization. Because this is about, and also you need to make sure that cash flow also maintained during the certain implementations. These are the elements you have to discuss under the commercial management. But when you go into contract practice, that is completely different. So you have to see how you are going to implement. Same as we discussed in the commercial management, whether there are provisions or not. So the same thing also, it is important to look into contract practice. You have to provide evidence of recent advice, particularly about utilizing appropriate contract provisions, or you want to implement certain additional amendments or some supplementary contract or memorandum of understanding to implement this change, which is initiated through the value engineering exercise. So when you are doing value engineering exercise, anyhow it is going to be a change to the project. So but this change, how you are going to implement within your contractual provisions. If it is having existing provisions, that is fine. So you have to discuss in terms of contractual provisions when you are discussing about the value engineering in your summary of experience, which is particularly mentioning the value engineering under contract practice. So these are the elements we are looking into. How the same thing is priced under the quantification and costing. Because many of the candidates, they are mentioning value engineering in many summary of experience competencies at level 3. So when you are providing level 3, that advice may be appropriate for particular core competency. You cannot use the technical prowess. That is not helpful when you are discussing contract practice. So that is what we are discussing today. So we are trying to identify the overlapping nature of this skill within different core competencies. Yes, Mr. Mayo, is it clear for you, or
Yes.
you want to discuss further?
Yeah, it's very clear. But
Thank you.
Per my summary of experience, I took design economics and cost planning. So my value
That is
engineering
fine.
will be done, post-contract. There's not really, pre-contract. So there's not really contractual mechanism to say that. But what sort of analysis could I do regarding value engineering during pre-contract? Could I do like a cost-benefit analysis?
Yes,
to
you have to
identify-
do the value management, because this is value management throughout the design economics you are doing. In that one particular instance, you are bringing up the value engineering exercise. When you are doing the value engineering exercise, you have to go back to your cost plan and try to bring how it is adding value to your existing element of your cost plan, because you are trying to do this for certain reason. If you are doing value engineering, there must be certain reason, because value management, that is subtly you are doing within the whole period. But when you are exercising value engineering, that is coming up, there are certain requirements, because your budget is getting exceeded in that element, or you may try to improve sustainability rating, or you may want to add some benefit to your cost. So what is the purpose? What is the motive? You have to seek that cost value analysis using the particular elements provided under your design economics, like specifically addressing to your cost plan. You have to relate it to the cost plan. What do you want to achieve through value engineering, and how you are comparing that to your cost control under your cost plan. That is very important when you are answering under design economics, because here there is no contractual things. It's not about your commercial management. It is purely about adding value to your project. But by which? So that is the question. Maybe not all the exercise are going to reduce the cost. Cost reduction are not the primary focus every time. So it may be different. Maybe sustainability rating purpose, or you want to improve the market value. What do you want to achieve? That is the question. The value engineering purpose, you have to relate it to your existing cost plan. What was the intended under the original cost plan? And now this value engineering exercise, how it is benefiting you. Is
Okay,
it fine? Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Anybody having anything to discuss?
Yeah, nothing from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Mayu.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Nothing from me, sir, also.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, Mr. Hussain, are you there? Okay. If at all there are nothing to discuss anything further, thank you for joining today. All the very best with your preparations. We will meet in the next session.
Thank you very much. And good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening.